advisory work at several locations. Ghana has designated every Wednesday as a day to wear the country's traditional outfit, the fugu, days after it sparked an online debate with Zambians. The government gained prominence last week when President John Dramani Mahama wore it during a state visit to Zambia, where some mockingly called it a blouse, prompting a fierce response from Ghanaians online. Ghana's Minister for Tourism, Abla Zifa Gomashie, said that wearing the outfit every week will assist project the country's identity with pride on the global stage. The fugu, also known as bakatari, is a traditional northern Ghanaian top made from hand-woven narrow strips of thick cotton fabric stitched together to form a structured poncho-style garment. It is worn by traditional leaders in northern Ghana as well as ordinary citizens and is a symbol of royalty and authority. And lastly, police in Ghana say the number of people killed in a school shooting in the western province of British Columbia has increased to 10 and left more than 24 injured. 7 were killed at the school in the town of Tumbleridge, where the presumed shooter was also found dead with a self-inflicted injury. 2 more people were found dead at a residence believed to be connected to the incident, and another person died on their way to hospital. Trent Anstey is a local journalist in Tumbleridge.
The province has promised to send supports to the community. So we've already got a psychiatric nurse in town who's able to talk to some of the people. But how this will resonate through the community, it's hard to tell. Like, it's really hard to just process this. So give us a few days, give us a few weeks, then we can start moving forward. But for right now, I think the community needs to just gather together and comfort itself, be comforted.
Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Mtsinzi.
SABC News. The African perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Manchester City cut Arsenal's lead at the top of the table to 3 points. And I'll tell you all the action from the Qatar Open today. Details coming up at 6:30.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
It is that time to rise and shine with us. Thank you so much for waking up with us, Africa. Good morning to you and welcome to the show on this Thursday, the 12th of February. We are, of course, Channel Africa, broadcasting from the African perspective, live in Johannesburg, South Africa. That's where our studios are. I'm Asanda Beda with Peter Ndoro, who will be saying hello in just a bit. Just also remember to connect with us on channelafrica.co.za. That's our website. You can also find us on YouTube live streaming at Channel Africa 1 is our handle there. Also on the SABC Plus app via mobile phones. We've got quite a few stories to cover in this, or the next 3 hours rather, of Rise and Shine. One of those stories we'll be looking at is in Nigeria, where several organizations are warning that a recent Senate-approved amendment to the Electoral Act could threaten the integrity of elections in that country. And then good morning, sir.
Good morning, Asanda Beda.
And what else can we be expecting to discuss on this Thursday?
I'm delighted because it's Friday tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah, it's always but it's been a good week though, generally, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Great.
Excellent. But everybody's been looking forward to today in South Africa because President Ramaphosa is going to be delivering the State of the Nation address. And there are so many issues on the ground. Citizens probably concerned with things like some parents still haven't got their kids in schools, and the state of water. There's a lot of water problems across the country, Johannesburg in particular, and one will have to see what the president says and addresses that situation. So, State of the Nation, Cyril Ramaphosa, later tonight in South Africa.
What would you want him to touch on, mostly?
For me, I think the perennial issues, and it's employment for the youth. Because one of the things that people don't think about is that every year 1 million young people turn 18. They come out of school and a fraction go to university or some kind of tertiary education. So the majority of them end up looking for work and they just no jobs. So that's my biggest worry for our country, to have tons and tons and tons of young people doing nothing. That's a recipe for disaster, because people doing nothing and no hope can be used.
Right. All right, the Africa Roundup is coming up in just a bit.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Okay, right. Every day after the 6 o'clock news, Monday to Friday, right here on Channel Africa's Rise and Shine, we bring you what we call the Africa Roundup. And essentially what it is to catch you up with the top news stories that have played out in the last 24 hours. That way you don't miss out on being informed, and we find that it helps set up the news day. And we use our team of journalists, correspondents from across the continent, and also, of course, we hear from the newsmakers themselves to put a little bit of context on those stories. So let's begin today's Africa Roundup with this story, and it's in West Africa, where in Nigeria, several organizations are warning that a recent Senate-approved amendment to the Electoral Act could threaten the integrity of elections there. They say that provisions allowing electronic transmission of results only where possible risks weakening protections against vote manipulation. Protests erupted in the capital ahead of lawmakers debating the bill. That's in Abuja.
Among those in the streets of the capital Abuja on Monday was former presidential candidate Peter Obi.
What we want is an electoral process that is transparent from beginning to finish.
The proposed amendments would require results to be transmitted electronically from polling stations to the Electoral Commission's results viewing portal in real time. That was something the Electoral Commission promised at the last election in 2023, but largely failed to achieve. Activist Ene Obi said progress has been made on electoral transparency, but needs to be maintained.
We want to ensure that whatever we are doing now will hold for the future. This is about the future of Nigerians.
Nigeria's next election is due in 2027.
5 major international organizations, the African Union, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, the League of Arab States, the European Union and the UN, have voiced serious concern over the escalating conflict in Sudan. They are calling for an immediate stop to all military action. Stefan Dujarric, spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, tells us more.
The group also emphasized the need for coordinated international efforts to de-escalate the conflict and halt the flow of weapons and fighters to end the violence that is sustaining the violence. As Ramadan approaches, it urged support for efforts to secure a humanitarian truce consistent with international law and Security Council Resolution 2736. The quintet reaffirmed its commitment to supporting a Sudanese-led, inclusive political dialogue towards ending the war.
Turning to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, who's the head of the UN's Peace Operations Department, has concluded a visit to the country. And during his trip, he held talks with President Félix Tshisekedi.
Speaking to the media after his meeting with the president, Mr. Lacroix stressed that in line with its mandate, the peacekeeping mission there will continue to support the implementation of the ongoing peace processes, including through its support of a permanent ceasefire. As a first step, he confirmed that in the coming days, the UN mission will deploy initial aerial reconnaissance mission to Uvira in South Kivu. Mr. Lacroix added that the mission deployment to support a permanent ceasefire will be phased, gradual, and dependent on guarantees for the safety and security of UN personnel and our assets. Today, he will make his way to the African Union to join the Secretary General at the summit.
In September of 2024, the Lesotho Highlands Water Project paused water transfers to South Africa to carry out routine maintenance on the tunnel. This inspection, conducted every 10 years, checks for signs of wear and tear, particularly on the steel linings. South Africa's chief delegate to the Lesotho Highlands Water Commission, Tebogo Nkahle, explains.
This is a very huge and complex project. It has technical aspects, it has financial aspects, it has social aspects, it has environmental aspects. Our transfer tunnel from the intake to Mwela Hydropower is 47 kilometers. From Mwela Hydropower to Clarence is 38 kilometers. That means the entire delivery system from Katsi to Clarence is 85 kilometers. If you add Mohali, which is another 38 kilometers, and add Purihari, it means when Purihari comes on board, the total tunneling system on the Lesotho Highlands Water Project would be around 161 kilometers.
China says that it's looking to strengthen trade ties with South Africa, and this follows the signing of a framework agreement on economic partnership aimed at shared prosperity. China's Consul General in Johannesburg, Pan Chijiang, describes the deal as a landmark agreement.
Both China and South Africa advocate open trade, free trade. So we defend the trading system together with the international community. So regarding the framework agreement between the two countries, I think this is the China's offer to African countries for zero tariff treatment. And that means the agreement set to grant the South Africa's exports of duty-free to access to China, and also boost the investment, the local economy. So we do hope that we work together to have an early harvest of its implementation.
And at 6:15 Central African Time, that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. Catch tomorrow's edition after the 6 a.m. news right here on Rise and Shine.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
I Show Speed, often called Speed, who is a popular American YouTuber and live streamer known for his high-energy personality, loud reactions, and unpredictable humor. He visited Ethiopia, and he was shocked what he found out, actually, when he got to Ethiopia. He got to find out that, they don't use the Gregorian calendar. That is, we are in 2026 right now. And he got to find out they are in 2018.
2018.
Now you trolling me. It's 2026.
No.
It ain't 2026. Wait, hold on. Wait, we in the past? Ronaldo is still in Real Madrid. Everything is in the past here.
Oh man, how shocked the Speed was. He went back in time.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Democratic lawmakers have fiercely spared with the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi over what they viewed as missteps in the release of the Epstein files. Bondi was appearing before the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee, where a number of Epstein's victims were present. The AG was accused of running an Epstein cover-up, particularly for redacting the names, accomplices and co-conspirators, while naming some of the victims. Bondi stood firm, rejecting the accusations as efforts to distract the public from the great successes being achieved under President Donald Trump's leadership, including records on the stock market. Show and Bryce Peace reports.
Bondi's appearance before the House Judiciary Committee was her first since the killing of 2 U.S. citizens by federal agents during protests in Minneapolis last month, and where Democrats took her to task over the Epstein documents release, including Jamie Raskin, the ranking Democrat on the committee.
You shockingly failed to redact many of the victims' names, which is what you were ordered to do by Congress. Some of the victims had come forward publicly, but many had not. Many had kept their torment private, even from family and friends. But you published their names, their identities, their images on thousands of pages for the world to see. So you ignored the law, and even with over 100,000 employees at your disposal, you acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence, cold indifference, and jaded cruelty towards more than 1,000 victims raped, abused, and trafficked. This performance screams cover-up.
In her opening statement, Bondi expressed deep sorrow for what any victims had been through as a result of Epstein's actions, whom she referred to as a monster, but was later pressed by Democratic lawmaker Pramila Jayapal.
Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Bondi's response?
Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General
Twice.
Bondi,
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility.
I'm not going to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
Bondi later called the line of questioning from Democrats a distraction.
They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now.
Lawmakers also questioning Bondi on the credibility of her department in relation to why the Justice Department refused to collaborate with state and local law enforcement in investigating the killings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty by federal agents. Democratic lawmaker Zoe Lofgren.
I really think that is a disgraceful approach to the homicides of American citizens, and really does nothing to bring credit to your department.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus, this is a hearing. I find it interesting she keeps going after Donald Trump. She doesn't say how much money she took from Reid Hoffman.
Lawmakers also question why more people were not facing charges in relation to Epstein's crimes, including Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who's seen in a picture from the files with an alleged victim.
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland these questions when he was Attorney General and set before.
I agree with you.
You twice.
I reclaim my time. I agree with
Asked why President Trump's repeated appearance in the files, including whether he attended any Epstein parties with underage girls.
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime.
Political theatrics often the name of the game, despite the devastatingly serious nature of the subject matter. I'm Sherwin Bryce Pease in New York.
The United States says that it will deploy around 200 troops to Nigeria to support the country's efforts to combat insurgency and strengthen security cooperation. Now, the move follows renewed criticism from the Trump administration, which has repeatedly accused Nigerian authorities of failing to do enough to prevent deadly attacks on Christian communities. The Nigerian government has pushed back against that characterization, saying that the violence affects multiple groups and is being addressed through ongoing security operations. Nick Harper tells us more from Washington.
The US is stepping up its global counter-terrorism efforts. News that it now plans to send 200 US military personnel to Nigeria. They'll be there on the ground with the aim of training up the Nigerian military to better fight militant groups in the country. Washington already has a small contingent of US forces in the West African country. They've been helping to identify potential terrorist targets. But the additional 200 troops significantly ramps up US ambitions in the country. We're told that the new US soldiers will be spread out across Nigeria, providing training and offering technical expertise. But they will not be involved in actual combat operations. All of this comes just a few weeks after President Donald Trump ordered airstrikes on suspected Islamic State targets in Nigeria, those strikes coming on Christmas Day, with the president saying he targeted terrorist scum responsible for killing Nigerian Christians. At the time, the US worked with Nigeria, who provided intelligence about the targets. But that's been part of the president's messaging, essentially that Nigeria has been unable to get to grips with what President Trump has called a Christian genocide. Remember, he used similar language of a genocide when referring to his claims of white South African farmers being killed in South Africa. In Nigeria, Christians and Muslims have been killed, but Trump-aligned activists and some Republican lawmakers are pushing the president to focus only on the Christian killings. Trump last year threatened to enter Nigeria, guns a-blazing, to try and get the situation under control and stop the killing of Christians. Nick Harper, SABC News, Washington.
A feasibility study report published by the Localization Support Fund has found that with the right industry development and policy support, an additional 81 million garments per annum could be sourced by South African retailers from local garment manufacturers by 2030. Findings show that achieving this could increase local sourcing by 20%, add billions in annual manufacturing output, and create up to 34,000 jobs. Here's Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu with more.
The study, commissioned by LSF and undertaken by Industrial Development Consultancy BMA, was conducted over a one-year period and included an extensive assessment of demand for local sourcing among major South African retailers, a mapping of capability and capacity across Southern African garment manufacturers, and the development of a commercial business case and action plans to drive localization in the industry. Aligned with the objectives of the Retail Clothing, Textile, Footwear and Leather Master Plan, the study aimed to provide practical insight to help translate policy ambitions for increased local sourcing and employment into implementable industry actions. Speaking at the launch of the report, Ishrat Kathrada, Chief Executive Officer of the LSF, said the study highlights considerable potential demand among Southern African retailers to source locally, which could help close the supply gap.
We need to scale up these factories, which means we need to think very, very differently about the business model. But if we can go from a small factory to a large one, we can employ more people. 2, we can hit the price points that retailers want. And 3, we can deal with some of the compliance issues that have been raised in the industry, because larger factories are much better enabled to deal with compliance and pay a much fairer wage. So I think this is an incredibly important piece of work. It moves us forward in terms of the master plan, and it will give us the goal line, if you will, to move forward in the industry.
The study identifies a clear commercial pathway for improving price competitiveness while maintaining compliance standards. One of its key findings relate to the optimal scale of operations. A significant portion of the supply base operates on small scale, and modeling shows that insufficient scale limits overhead recovery, constrains investment, and weakens price competitiveness. Labour unions have welcomed the findings. Michael Lawrence, the executive director at the National Clothing Retail Federation, says the doors of opportunity that have opened through this study create an excitement that should encourage increase in investment in regional and local manufacturer to new and greater heights.
We're very excited about the study. We've been huge supporters. The National Clothing Retail Federation has signed the master plan. We were one of the original authors and supporters, and we've signed it, and we think this is an important stage now of next step. It's important that we know exactly what is likely to form the basis of where investment can take place, where orders can go, and where manufacturing needs to position itself in order to meet the orders that are going to come from retail.
Simon Apple, Director of Research at the South African Clothing and Textile Workers Union, says the markets are often imperfect systems of unequal knowledge between supply and demand, and the study takes a step towards closing that gap.
The research points to the fact that if a local factory is going to compete with Chinese goods or foreign goods, it needs to be a large factory. It's easier for large factories to compete than small factories. The takeaway there is we need to try to grow factories. One of the things that needs to be deliberated on is how are we going to grow smaller, medium factories to the kind of optimal sizes of around 180 people, 200 people, etc. And that's a discussion that's going to have to be taken forward. The research points to the fact that it's hard for local factories at the moment to try to manage some of their costs in a context where they're so reliant on the local industry. Because there are times in the local season where demand falls. So the research says let's look overseas, let's look abroad and try and bring orders from overseas in the quiet periods of the South African local market. And that's a great suggestion. We think that there's a lot of opportunity for the local industry. We think that although it's competitive out there, there are opportunities we can take advantage of.
The study also indicates that more adaptive shift models could materially improve competitiveness. For categories with strong short-term localization potential, such as basic needs, success will depend on aligning demand commitments, compliance pathways, skills development, upstream investment, and firm-level measures such as scaling, exploring new shifts arrangement, and targeted incentives. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Still to come, we catch you up with what's happening in the world of sports as well as business from the African perspective. Right now, though, let's catch you up with news headlines. And here's Onele Nzinzi. It's 6:30 Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will tonight deliver the State of the Nation address to a joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces at Cape Town City Hall. The State of the Nation address is an annual overview delivered by the President to mobilize all sectors of society and to secure ongoing development in the country. Families of the apartheid-era victims in South Africa say investigations into Truth and Reconciliation Commission-related crimes were deliberately suppressed. This says the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the alleged political interference in the DRC cases got underway in Johannesburg yesterday. And voters are heading to the polls in Bangladesh for the first time since a deadly uprising in 2024 unseated the authoritarian Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport, and we say a very good morning to you, Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. A very good morning indeed from the sports desk. So Manchester City turned up the heat in the Premier League title race by taking apart Fulham in the first half to close the gap on leaders Arsenal to just 3 points. Now the Gunners are looking over their shoulders before today's trip to Brentford United after Pep Guardiola's side backed up Sunday's last gasp comeback at Liverpool by sealing a comfortable 3 points at the Etihad Stadium on Wednesday night. Now 3 goals in a space of a 15 first half minutes inflicted the damage against the Cottagers, who have now suffered 3 consecutive defeats. Guardiola's side had gone 4 games without a victory at the start of the year, but have responded by winning 3 of the last 4 matches, with a 2-2 draw at Tottenham Hotspur having been 2-0 ahead, their only slight blemish. Now, victory over Fulham reinforced Etihad Stadium as a fortress for City, extending their unbeaten home run to 12 games and now taking 47 points out of a possible 54 as the type of run that could prove crucial in the chase for the top flight. Let's hear from manager Pep Guardiola.
It was a really good performance, yeah. One of the best in the season after Anfield. For our experience, when it's important in emotional games like Anfield, the Champions League, the next one always is tricky. We're like it was a home and away, and we know the experience what happened in our first leg there when we suffered incredible second half because they are, I said, we didn't run, yeah. We ran there. The process, they were so good. And we adjust a few things. And the first half in our pressing, counter-pressing with the ball. And second half, they make a step up. When we're in a team, they are more aggressive. They are more, jump more. And after that, and the fatigue is there. Bernardo was exhausted. Rodri was exhausted.
All right, so in other matches that took place last night, Burnley United beat Crystal Palace away from home by 3-2, while Aston Villa got the better of Brighton Hove Albion, that game ending a 1-0 in favour of Aston Villa. Nottingham Forest as well as Wolves playing out to a goalless draw, and then Sunderland were beaten 1-0 at home by Liverpool. Well, still the Premier League, so Nottingham Forest have now sacked coach Sean Dyche as head coach after just 114 days in charge and are looking now for their 4th boss for the season. Now, Forest were held to a goalless draw at home by bottom-placed side Wolves on Wednesday and are just now 3 points above the Premier League relegation zone with about 12 games remaining. Now, Dyche succeeded Ange Postecoglou in October of last year and also assigned a contract until 2027. Thomas Frank, meanwhile, has been sacked by Tottenham Hotspur after just under 8 months in charge following their dismal 2-1 defeat at home against Newcastle on Tuesday. Spurs are 16th on the Premier League table and just 5 points above the relegation zone following a dreadful run of form. The North London side are winless in their last 8 Premier League games, their longest run without a victory since October of 2008. They have won just 2 of their last 17 league matches and picked up only 12 in that time. Back home now, a weaker Mamelodi Sundowns is not good for South African football. That's according to Bafana as well as Kaizer Chiefs legend Dr. Khumalo. Now, Sundowns are going through a series of internal issues, having been disposed at the summit of the Betway Premiership table by Orlando Pirates and are now in danger of elimination in the CAF Champions League. The Brazilians have also been the backbone of Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce's squad for the past few years and also played a prominent role in the AFCON 2023 bronze medal as well as the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualification campaigns. Khumalo hopes the Pretoria-based side can overcome its current challenges.
They make this PSL game, the PSL League, exciting. They produce a lot of team players for South Africa, and we can't celebrate when Sundowns are having a problem. I'm praying and hoping that they resolve their problems because we can't afford to lose Sundowns. Because remember, I'll tell you one thing, that Sundowns are very important to us. When the draw was made here World Cup, they asked the Mexican coach, what do you think about South Africa? He was talking about South Africa, but he answered by saying, I saw Sundowns playing in the Club World Cup with this and that.
Meanwhile, this is a big week for Kaizer Chiefs as they are en route to Egypt for their all-important CAF Confederation Cup match against Zamalek. The two teams will play their final Group D game in Ismailia on Saturday, with Amakosi currently leading the group and just needing a draw to confirm their place in the quarterfinals. Khumalo shares what has been good about the team in this campaign of the CAF Confederation Cup.
What is good about Kaizer Chiefs, they don't approach the domestic games the same as the CAF. Because remember, the coach alluded to the fact that some of the boys, or most of the boys at Kaizer Chiefs, don't have the kind of experience to play the CAF tournament. And this is work in progress where he's trying probably to instill, or maybe for them to understand that you guys don't underestimate yourself. So the least that they can do when they're going to play Zamalek, they don't have to put themselves under pressure. But they need to know that the supporters back at home, they're behind them.
And finally, Team Botswana started the All-Africa Senior Badminton Championships on a no note after the men's team lost 5-0 to Nigeria. Nigeria, which is regarded one of Africa's super powerhouses, came out guns blazing, winning all of their matches by convincing margins. Now, Team Botswana coach Oreditse Dele said post the matches that his team did not have a good start, adding that although they lost 5-0, the team did well considering that Nigeria also beat them with a big margin. Now the coach says that what let them down was a number of unforced errors that gave Nigeria the upper hand. Dele says they still have some matches to play, but decried that their preparations ahead of the tournament were affected by financial constraints. It is 6:38 a.m. Central African Time. That concludes your first sporting update this morning on Channel Africa. More sporting updates coming up in the next hour. Meanwhile, for any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. We are also on call, so give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Coming up on Rise and Shine, we touch on my favorite topic, talking farming and agriculture. The Human Sciences Research Council of South Africa hosted a webinar for this group of people looking at food security and poverty alleviation in South Africa and strengthening small-scale agri-food systems. We'll find out more in just a bit.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Let's now catch you up with what's happening in the world of business. We get our first update for this Thursday morning from Chandugo Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. The Democratic Republic of Congo's Mines Minister Louis Watum Kabamba says Congo will look for other partners if its minerals cooperation framework with the U.S. does not lead to concrete projects. The minister says everything they have done with America is a framework under which they will discuss questions of mutual interest. Watum Kabamba said this on the sidelines of the Indaba Mining Conference in Cape Town, South Africa. Kenya's central bank says it anticipates going into the purchase of gold, becoming the latest African country looking to buy the precious metal as a way of diversifying its reserve holdings. Other African nations topping up their reserves with gold include the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda and Namibia. Governor Kamau Tuge says they anticipate going into the purchase of gold as an extra buffer. He says it is something that they have indicated before and also says it's one of the ways of diversifying holding of reserves. Zambia's central bank has cut its benchmark lending rate by a bigger than expected 75 basis points to 13.50%, saying inflation was projected to fall faster than it predicted at its last meeting in November. The median forecast in a Reuters poll of economists was for a 25 basis point cut. Wednesday's policy announcement was the second rate cut in a row. And mineral research organization Mintac says new research indicates that waste produced from coal mining may contain critical minerals. Mintac's executive manager for minerals processing, Dr. Lawrence Bossa, was speaking at the Investing in African Mining Indaba in Cape Town, South Africa. He said the extraction of minerals from coal waste can create additional markets.
What we've discovered with some of the research we've been doing with coal is in our Coal Reimagine program, the value that you can get out of coal discards and fly ash. I'll give you an example. South Africa every year annually combusts and generates 25 million tons of coal fly ash each year. 25 million tons. Now, within that, we've discovered critical minerals. You can extract from coal things like vanadium, alumina, silica, gallium.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has called on the EU to tear down economic barriers and simplify business rules to boost its competitiveness. Addressing the European Parliament in Strasbourg, she said that the EU suffered from what she called fragmentation on steroids, struggling with more than 300 trading venues. Now let's have a look at financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is 1,000 naira 352. In Botswana, 12 pula 97. Kenya, 128 shilling 176. Zambia, 18 kwacha 98. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil, 5 real 19. Russia, 77 rubles 20. India, 90 rupees 65. China, 6 yuan 91. South Africa, 15 rand 88 cents. $1 is at 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $5,055, platinum at $2,117 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $69.67 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Now, community-based savings groups continue to play a vital role in household finance across the continent, helping millions of people pool money, manage risk, and fund major life needs. In South Africa, one of the country's largest banks, FNB, First National Bank, has launched a fully digital account opening and management platforms for stokvels. And that's a popular form of group savings clubs where members contribute regularly and take turns receiving payouts or use the funds for shared goals. The new system allows these groups to register and operate securely using only a smartphone, improving access to formal banking in both rural and urban areas. Tutungo Beni has more.
Stokvels for the majority of Black South Africans have been the vehicle for reaching their common goals, whether it's saving for school fees or towards construction of their homes. Statistics indicate that the majority of South Africans don't have a saving culture. However, the numbers tell a different story as millions of people utilize stokvels as a saving platform. The stokvel industry in the Southern African nation is estimated to be worth over $3 billion, which is over 50 billion in rands. Stokvels have been the target of robberies and cash scams due to the lack of tailor-made secure banking solutions for effective fund distribution. To address this challenge, FNB, one of the country's leading commercial banks, has launched a digital end-to-end platform that enables complete digital account opening process for stokvels. Letania Johnson, Chief Executive for FNB Personal Segment, says the stokvel sector plays an important role in the South African economy.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is we appreciate the importance of the stokvel sector in South Africa. And the reason why it's important is because it's about financial inclusion. A lot of people join stokvels even before they've gone into a bank. So that was the first important point. The second thing is stokvels have been pivotal in helping families to navigate financial uncertainties. If you think about it, why do we save? Groceries, funeral, we save for education. So we felt by creating this solution, we can also help communities to navigate economic shocks, help them to plan better. I think the last thing that was quite important for us is if there's so much capital circulating in the market, because stokvels in South Africa on an annual basis circulate 50 billion rand. This solution needs to help to make sure that it's trusted, it is secure, it is safe, and that the members actually know what happens to their money. So that was why we thought this was quite important.
FNB banks 10% of stokvels in the country, which means this innovation will enable the stokvels in rural and urban areas to secure their funds without the hurdle of coordinating branch visits. Himal Pabu, FNB Cash Investments Chief Executive, says they want to help communities with their latest offering.
Over the years, we started this journey in 2021. We've had over 120,000 stokvels, that are active stokvels with us. By the end of last year, before the grocery withdrawal, they saved close to 5 billion rand. And we're seeing about almost 6 billion rand being saved annually with our product. And it just shows that we're making a difference. Today we can turn out the solution and we can go to people, we can help more people, we can go to their communities, and we can scale further and we can help the country transform.
Stokvel scams have been on the rise in the country, with some stokvels reporting the unauthorized withdrawal of funds by one of their members without the group's knowledge and later failing to recover these funds. This launched platform seeks to prevent these situations. Head of product at FNB, Mfundo Mabaso, says this platform will ensure transparency and secure banking.
I think for us, the big thing was we tried to solve age-old problems. Customers have always been complaining about the security issue, where one person has access and control and could disappear with the money. So this security piece was very important. And then the other thing was customers keep complaining about, I don't know what's happening. We have to wait for the person who knows, the treasurer, the chairperson, or a book, or whatever the case might be. So taking that into account, we said, how do we help solve those problems in a way that catches up with modernization?
Stokvel expert and author Busis Kenjana attended this launch and encouraged stokvel members to constantly maintain a relationship with the bank and keep track of their savings.
So the same principle need to apply to you as a stokvel. Your stokvel is a business. It's your business. It may be a social business, but it is a business at the end of the day. So please try and forge relationships, build relationships with your bank. Don't only go to the bank when there's a problem and say, hey, we thought we've got 53,000 rands in this bank account. Now there's only 3,000 rands, So that's the only time you want to start engaging the bank.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Beni in Durban.
Get in touch with us at Channel Africa 1. That's our handle across the various social media platforms. We are on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, as well as TikTok.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The Human Sciences Research Council, HSRC of South Africa, hosted a webinar on Wednesday titled Strengthening Small-Scale Agri-Food Systems to Enhance Household Food Security and Poverty Alleviation. The webinar highlighted the role of small-scale farmers in enhancing food security, particularly for vulnerable households, and aims to inform policies that improve livelihoods. The SABC's CC Sechalo has more on this story.
The webinar explored ways to strengthen small-scale agri-food systems in urban, peri-urban and rural settings in South Africa, aligning with the 2030 National Development Policy goals. It looked at the role and contribution of small-scale food system actors in enhancing equity and food and nutrition security in South Africa's food and breaking the red tape of municipal bylaws and policies for inclusive participation of small-scale food system actors in urban and peri-urban communities. One of the speakers, Dr. Mark Vegeriff, a lecturer at the University of Pretoria in South Africa, highlighted that there's a misfit between different parts of the food system in the country and that it is very hard for a small-scale black farmer to be successful in selling and making money in corporate-dominated large-scale supply chains. Vegeriff explains how important the informal trade is.
They're carving out literally a space in the streets where they're taking the public space of the streets, like the woman sitting here, selling spinach, also selling Morocco and so on, bringing some indigenous foods into this as well. And they're challenging and offering an option to the corporate and capitalist system. So how they organize multitudes of small-scale actors. They're very socially embedded in relations, but they're very individualistic. It's always their business, but they also work together, sharing transport, for example, buying together, helping each other in their stalls, and so on. So they manage this tension between collaboration and competition in a way that I think is very effective.
Professor Njabulise Ningidi, an associate professor in security from the Center for Transformative Agricultural Food System at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, spoke about breaking the red tape of municipal bylaws and policies for inclusive participation of small-scale food system actors in urban and peri-urban communities of South Africa. He attests that small-scale food actors feed millions of urban households and to some extent even non-urban households. He says while they are important, they are systematically excluded by municipal regulations, and that points to a governance issue. He explains why the municipal red tapes exclude small food actors.
The first part of it is that the bylaws are designed for large formal enterprises, not for your informal sector, not for your smallholder farmer, and not for your urban food producers. And the zoning itself is very restrictive. Therefore, people from participating in the food value in the food system, and because of that, then it creates a problem. But another problem is that the assumption is that it's a one size fit all kind of health and safety rules, where it is assumed that the regulations are the same for all actors, large and small, which should not be the case. My argument is that these regulations should be differentiated based on the scale, your scale.
Professor Ngidi elaborates that there are consequences for the exclusion in municipal bylaws.
And one of that is that food actors now tend to operate illegally. That's where the big problem is that before you even sell one tomato, we are already illegal where you are because the municipal zoning does not permit you to be selling where you are selling. So it makes you to be always in conflict with the law enforcers and environmental health officers. And so that's where the problem also begins, is that then now the municipalities are always coming to punish instead of coming to support you in the development agenda. And then, of course, there will be missed opportunities for food security and jobs, because if these guys are always in conflict with the law, then they are likely to be displaced, to be arrested, to be chased away from there.
The speakers concluded with one voice that the participation of small food actors is essential. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Africa's biggest cities are under growing pressure to deliver reliable basic services. And Johannesburg, South Africa's largest economic hub, is now facing a deepening water crisis that experts say carries lessons for urban centres across the continent. Civil society group Water Can warns that parts of the city are already experiencing what it calls day zero conditions, with some communities left without running water for weeks. And this is not due to drought, but because of aging infrastructure and governance failures. The organisation is calling for the situation to be declared a national disaster, arguing that urgent intervention is needed to safeguard access to water as a basic human right. Our reporter Lebohang Mabange has more.
Civil society group Water Can says Johannesburg is already living the reality of day zero, not because of drought, but because of failing infrastructure and poor governance. Water expert and executive director at Water Can, Dr. Feriel Adam, explains why the organization believes the city has reached this critical point.
We've described Johannesburg as being under day zero conditions, for sure. The reason we are saying that we have day zero conditions is because large parts of Joburg have gone without water for days. So if we look at Melville, West, Dean, that have gone without water for 23 days, Parktown West for 16, 17 days, Emerentia for same 16 days, this is large outages, and this is a day zero. There's no water coming out of the taps, and there's no move to actually make sure that people get water. So it's not a climatic day zero. It's an infrastructural day zero.
Adam says the crisis cannot be blamed on a single authority, arguing that accountability lies across all spheres of government.
So the biggest failure, in my view, is that it's at all levels of government. And I think that when the minister says this is nothing she can do and it's really a municipality issue, is just shirking responsibility, because at the end of the day, the Constitution says that water is a basic human right. And so why must that only be a local government competency? And the other thing is that this is a failing system. So by just turning your head or looking the other way is not going to actually solve the problems that we have. Joburg is struggling.
Water Can is now calling for the water crisis to be declared a national disaster, saying this could unlock urgent support and resources needed to stabilize the system.
We've called for the water crisis to be declared a national disaster. And what this would mean is that there will be a focused attention on the issues that's going on in the city of Joburg. It would release some funds. It would be able to focus some skills within the area and skills deployment. So that is something we're looking at. And that is why we're calling for it. Because can you believe it? Still, day to day, the minister says that there's nothing they can do and it's all in the hands of municipalities. And if we have that approach, we are not going to be able to deal with the issues that we have at municipal level, because across the country, municipalities are not doing what they need to do.
Water Can warns that without urgent national intervention, Johannesburg's water system will continue to deteriorate, placing millions of residents at risk and deepening inequality across the city. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebohang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And you're still with Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. As we enter the next hour, we say good morning to you, and we'll let you know what's coming up in this particular hour in just a bit with Asanda, Beda and Peter Ndoro. Let's start with our news at 7 o'clock Central African time. Here's Onele.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Asanda. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will tonight deliver the State of the Nation address to a joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces at the Cape Town City Hall. The State of the Nation address is an annual overview delivered by the President to mobilize all sectors of society to secure ongoing development in the country. The joint sitting provides an opportunity for the President to reflect on progress made, highlight key achievements, flag challenges and outline the government's policy direction and program of action for the year ahead. Ramaphosa is expected to outline interventions for the coming financial year, deliberating on South Africa's domestic priorities as well as the country's continental and international relations. Amnesty International South Africa has meanwhile called on the government to put action to promise consistently made at the State of the Nation address. In a statement, the organization says it will continue to call on political postures that create the appearance of action without delivering real change. Amnesty International South Africa's Genevieve Quintal.
Let this be time for action to be implemented. Let the government do less talking and put effort into practicing the change that is being mentioned annually at the State of the Nation address. Announcements, plans and commissions cannot replace decisive leadership, enforcement of the law and accountability. Without urgent action on corruption, safety and accountability, the State of the Nation will continue to worsen.
Families of the apartheid-era victims in South Africa say investigations into Truth and Reconciliation Commission-related crimes were deliberately suppressed. The families were speaking on the first day of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into alleged political interference in Johannesburg. The inquiry is examining whether political meddling delayed or blocked prosecutions of the apartheid-era crimes. In a joint statement read by Fatima Haran Massoud, the daughter of the late anti-apartheid activist and struggle stalwart Imam Abdul Haron, the families say their court papers show cases were deliberately suppressed in violation of their constitutional rights.
Our court papers illustrate investigations and prosecutions of GRC cases were deliberately suppressed by South Africa's democratic government in violation of our rights to equality, dignity, and the right to life and bodily integrity. Such conduct has no place in a constitutional democracy founded on human rights and the right of or the rule of law. As a result of our court application, and following partial settlements between the parties, President Cyril Ramaphosa agreed to establish a commission of inquiry.
At least 31 people have died after a powerful cyclone struck Madagascar. The disaster authority in the Indian Ocean island says Cyclone Gezani made landfall on Tuesday, hitting the island's main port, Toamasina. The National Office for Risk and Disaster Management said many were killed when houses collapsed. The cyclone's landfall is likely to have been one of the most intense recorded around the city in the satellite era. Madagascar's Disaster Management Office has evacuated dozens of injured people and hundreds of residents from a district around Toamasina, home to 400,000 people. Gezani is the second cyclone to hit Madagascar this year. That's 10 days after tropical cyclone Fiatia killed 14 and displaced over 31,000 people. And lastly, voters are heading to the polls in Bangladesh for the first time since a deadly uprising in 2024 that unseated the authoritarian Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. There are two main candidates vying to replace her. The BBC's Jonathan Frowin explains.
Tariq Rahman is the son of a former Prime Minister and his Bangladesh Nationalist Party has been leading the polls, but it faces stiff competition from the country's largest Islamist party, Jamaat-e-Islami, led by Shafiqur Rahman. That party has faced criticism for fielding no female candidates. Sheikh Hasina's Awami League has been banned from running. Last year, a court sentenced her to death in absentia. She's currently in exile in India. The electorate will also cast their ballots on constitutional changes proposed by the interim government to fix what it called a completely broken political system.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, South Africa suffer a double super over drama in the T20 World Cup thriller against Afghanistan, while Manchester City cut Arsenal's lead to 3 at the top of the table. I'll tell you more at 7:30.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
It's 7:06 Central Africa time, and this is well and truly the second hour of Rise and Shine on this Thursday morning. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in to the channel that brings you the African perspective and the program Rise and Shine with me, Peter Ndoro, and Asanda Beda. You'll hear from her in just a few seconds. Just to remind you that we are streaming live on the internet, channelafrica.co.za, and you can also catch us on your mobile phones. Just go to your mobile app store and look for SABC Plus, that's SABC Plus, and then search for Channel Africa and of course Rise and Shine, and there you'll find us giving you the best in news and current affairs every morning between 6 and 9 Central African time. Asanda Beda, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Peter Ndoro. We're now entering the second hour of Rise and Shine, and we're also entering a very hot season in Johannesburg. Everyone is complaining about how hot it is. We're all melting, we
goodness.
say. The Valentine's Day chocolates are going to be melting, I'm thinking.
Oh gosh, it is Valentine's Day. Is it Saturday? When is it?
Saturday.
Gosh,
the 14th of
So the roses
February.
are triple the price.
Because of the heat?
No, because it's,
because
it's
of
that
the
one day in
time
the year they know they can sell tons of red roses.
Yeah, especially the red and white ones.
Oh, my goodness. So what are you looking at this hour?
The focus on the UN Security Council resolutions over the past decade has always been African stories and the challenges faced by our continent. However, we have no permanent seat, even now in this day and age. And Oxfam, an aid agency, is calling for urgent reform. They want that to be changed in terms of the Security Council, saying that African representation is important, critical in making decisions that shape Africa's future, particularly on peace and security. So we'll be speaking about that, getting analysis.
And I'll be having an important conversation with the regional director for Africa at the ICRC, who say that Africa is now at the center of the world's humanitarian crises, with conflicts driving record level displacement and deep civilian suffering. And the ICRC is saying that we need to see more commitment from our governments and authorities. As I said, I'll be chatting to the regional director for Africa within the next hour to get a sense of what they're seeing and what needs to be done.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African time. Only on Channel Africa.
Africa has been the focus of 4 out of every 5 UN security resolutions over the past decade. Yet, the continent still has no permanent seat at the table. As African leaders gather for the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, aid agency Oxfam is calling for urgent reform of the Security Council, warning that decisions shaping Africa's peace and security are being made without African representation. To discuss this, we're joined on the line by Elise Nalbandian, who's Oxfam's African Union Office liaison. Elise, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Asanda. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. I mean, Africa dominates the agenda when it comes to the UN Security Council, yet we have no permanent seat. Why is it important that we talk about this, particularly at this particular point in time, as well as with leaders meeting at the AU Summit in Addis Ababa?
It's always been important that we talk about this, of course, because the United Nations Security Council is vitally important, but it is dangerously illegitimate. As Oxfam's executive director said, the P5, that's the powerful 5 countries with the veto power, assumed a role in a colonial era that has long passed, but the institution remains in that moment. It has not yet changed. It hasn't actually given up its powers. Indeed, Africa makes up 28% of the UN membership and is the subject of more than 80% of the resolutions on protracted crises. 354 out of 437 resolutions on protracted crises are on the African continent itself. Yet it remains the only region fully excluded from permanent membership. This is not an oversight. That's the problem. It is a deliberate preservation of the system designed to concentrate power in former colonial capitals. That's why it matters.
Right. And Oxfam is arguing that decisions that are taken in New York don't reflect what's happening on the ground on our continent. What gets lost when African voices are missing from these critical conversations?
What gets lost, what we miss, is accountability, context, and lived reality of the people who are actually on the ground itself. It's a bunch of diplomats in New York who don't really have a connection to the people on the ground. And there is the A3, the 3 African countries in the Security Council, the non-permanent members. But how often do they get listened to? They have themselves in the past expressed frustrations of being listened to. There are examples, I'm not going to go into examples now, but in Oxfam's report from 2024 called Vetoing Humanity, and if you look at the annex that we just wrote, which is called No Representation, No Peace, we actually also argue that the systems are built to concentrate the power up there. And there's the penholder system and so on and so forth, which are all a continuation of the colonial legacy. This is not representation. This is paternalism dressed as procedure. African society leaders were very, very clear in 2024 during the Summit of the Future when they said that genuine reform means African voices should be the ones shaping the peace mandates, for example. That is vitally important, and yet how often are we sure that the African voices are heard? Not just consulted, they have to shape them. Without that, the Council remains a tool for managing instability rather than building justice. So the Council is vitally important if it works, and we need it to work. That's it.
Right, and on that point, I mean, if we look at last year, many of the Council's resolutions on Africa involved either sanctions or military action. But, I mean, we see that that didn't really yield the results that it needed to. So what would a more effective measure be in bringing lasting peace then?
I mean, you know, resolutions are not peace. They're pieces of paper, and they're important pieces of paper when they are implemented. And yet, Oxfam, for example, found that while the Security Council adopted 79 resolutions on Sudan and South Sudan and 53 on Somalia in the past decade, it's the same time period I'm talking about, humanitarian needs, and your next speaker will talk about this, so I won't actually go into that. Humanitarian needs in those countries have nearly quadrupled in the same decade. In the DRC, despite 25 resolutions over a decade, the MONUSCO mission, for example, was chronically underfunded and uncoordinated. One might even call it set up to fail. When a resolution passes but lacks enforcement, adequate resources or a credible exit strategy are also not there, it's not a solution. It's not going to bring peace. So when we do pass a resolution, we have to mean it. We have to live with it. We have to live by it, and we have to implement it. And that's not always the case. It is a performance of action that allows the Council to claim it has done something while the bomb continues to fall. So resolutions on their own don't bring peace. Sanctions on their own don't bring peace.
Yeah. Many African leaders have backed the Ezulwini consensus on Security Council reform. So what's stopping that position from translating into real change?
Yes. The Ezulwini consensus is 20 years old. Well, it's 21 this year. And it has some very sensible demands there. It demands 2 permanent African seats with full veto powers. It demands also several other things. But nearly 20 years later, there is no agreement on who should occupy these seats. Africa is its worst enemy on this one. We have an Africa that is divided on this issue. They agree we need permanent seats, but everyone wants it for themselves. So, for example, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, big countries who have a level of power and could actually do the job are the usual contenders, but there is no continental consensus supporting any one of them. Meanwhile, the P5 offer rhetoric without teeth. They say things like, well, we'll support the permanent membership without the veto power, and so on and so forth. The verbal support is there for Africa, but if you notice, there is no actual written agreement that we can negotiate on. It's all very much up in the air. And why would the P5 be interested in reform when the status quo is benefiting them quite so much, right? So for
if we had one
Oxfam
solid
and
message from Africa, what do you think that message would be that Africa wants the Security Council, if they were listening, to hear today?
Well, the message is not new. It's not complicated. In fact, it's what Africa has been saying since the decolonial era. And of course, whatever we say now, it's not optional for a better future. How can one conceive that a continent with 1.4 billion people, who are the youngest people on the planet, have no voice in the decisions that determine its destiny? We are the continent which have this many people, and most of the young people as well. So we have a long-term view on everything. Africa is not asking for a seat at a broken table. We want to rebuild the table, and that's what we should be doing. That also means we need to abolish the veto. We need to end some of the systemic bureaucracies inside the United Nations Security Council, which limit Africa's voice, like the penholder system. We need to cancel the debts and reform the global financial architecture that extracts 30 billion an hour from the global south to the north. And we need to really seriously talk about the reparations agenda, not as symbolism, but as a structural redress for centuries of extraction and exploitation.
Elise, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it there, and we value your insights.
Thank you, Asanda.
That's Elise Nalbandian, who is Oxfam's African Union Office liaison, speaking to us about Africa's exclusion from the UN Security Council and calls for reform as leaders gather for the African Union Summit that's happening in Addis Ababa.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC, is in South Africa this week, stepping up its diplomatic efforts to address Africa's escalating humanitarian crises. Patrick Youssef, who's the ICRC's regional director for Africa, is in Cape Town meeting government officials and diplomats to try and draw attention to the urgent needs of civilians caught in conflict and to advocate for stronger political commitment to international humanitarian law. Let's speak to him now about these meetings and what they hope to accomplish. Patrick, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the program. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You say that Africa is now at the center of the global humanitarian crises. What does that actually look like right now for ordinary civilians caught in conflict?
Well, it looks very dramatic, quite critical in terms of the needs that are brought to the local population, unfortunately, because of the violence and the wars. You know, with more than 50 active armed conflicts in Africa, representing almost 40% of all conflicts worldwide, the humanitarian situation naturally degrades from year to year. And last year was quite critical in terms of the number of displaced within the continent, but also the number of refugees left also because of the armed conflicts, pushing people to move away from not only their homes, but their countries.
So, which conflict zones are currently your most urgent concern on the continent right now?
Well, I would say every theater of war is a major concern because of its size, its implications on the civilian population, and its effects on the social services that they should have. Obviously, Sudan is the worst humanitarian crisis across the globe, with the number of displaced over 13 million. People have been displaced within the country. But I would also add the Democratic Republic of Congo's war in the east, namely in Goma, in the north, the Lake Chad region, the Central African Republic. Again, a number of armed conflicts that are equally important, although, as I said, with the scale of the needs in the Sudan and DRC, but also now more recently in Somalia because of the food insecurity, we keep our attention quite high and indeed put the required resources to be able to respond to the humanitarian needs.
So you're in South Africa, in Cape Town, meeting government and diplomatic leaders. What specific outcomes are you pushing for and would like to see come out of these talks?
Well, first and foremost, it's the main message is really first and foremost to bring more attention to the armed conflicts that plague the continent. Again, a continent that has a huge potential, and we see that out of South Africa, Kenya, in Senegal, in so many countries. However, we have a list of other countries that are, again, plagued and cursed by lengthy armed conflicts, by prolonged suffering over 30 years in many countries, with, again, effects on the local population, but also on trade, on commerce, on the global economic outlook for a continent that indeed should be thriving and moving forward. The second message, obviously, is one that asks indeed the South African government to support the humanitarian efforts of the International Committee of the Red Cross, but also the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement as a whole. And I would also add that with the political processes and peace processes that exist across Africa, we always seek that international humanitarian law be really at the center of every political process, or if there are none, that to again advocate for South Africa's voice to be heard on international humanitarian law, on the respect of international humanitarian law, namely because South Africa is also one of the founding members of a global IHL initiative that was launched last year to galvanize more political support to, again, comply and respect international humanitarian law across the world, and obviously specifically in Africa.
Do you think South Africa's diplomatic influence across the continent and maybe even globally can help in terms of maybe getting some practical commitments from authorities and governments across the continent?
Well, I'm sure it's a very strong anchor state. It's a It's a very important voice at the African Union, at the SADC level as well, but also globally. And like we indeed advocate in many capitals of the world, South Africa is one where we have a very long partnership, an operational partnership built on trust and on confidence. And we are quite certain that joining these voices that call for more respect of the law during armed conflicts will, I hope, bring much more dividends and investments in what we think should be indeed the future of humanitarianism also across Africa, a way to respond to humanitarian crises, but also not just to manage crises, but really to be able to find root causes and long-lasting solutions for such issues and problems. And again, it's not only in South Africa that we do this work, across Africa in many capitals, but also across the world.
When you say things like greater political commitment, what does that actually require governments to do differently in practical terms right now?
Well, it's basically to not just reaffirm politically and voice that in public forums, but it's actually to pick up the phone and call a counterpart in another country and plead indeed in the name of humanity for a better respect of international law. It is to take proactive actions at regional, but also at continental forums. Upcoming is the AU Assembly, and there we're really expecting a louder voice on making sure that a war continues, that the belligerents respect international law, but they also respect the basic principles of humanity, meaning those who are not fighting be afforded the right protection, and those infrastructures that are supposed to serve the local population, from providing water to health services, that they are not to be targeted. And therefore, it is practically very possible, after being very vocal, to truly take measures and steps to make sure that during armed conflicts, these laws are respected. And indeed, as we always say, if the intention is to go to peace, then again, the best way to pave the way to peace is by respecting the law, is by treating humanely every person deprived of liberty, but also every woman, every man, every elderly who needs medical attention. And again, bringing more humanity to an environment that unfortunately has been plagued again by violence, by wars, by armed conflicts, and by divisions. And that's basically the message of humanity that the Geneva Conventions have always carried. And we truly hope that every country in the world joins this initiative and brings its voice and its contribution to that global initiative.
Patrick, I wish we could talk for longer, but sadly time's not on our side. So thank you very, very much indeed for joining us and highlighting this critical issue. And I love the word humanity. If we could just find that for all of our people across the continent. And we wish you the best with your deliberations in Cape Town.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks again for having me.
That was Patrick Youssef, the ICRC's Regional Director for Africa, joining us live from Cape Town. And I think sometimes we might be guilty of numbing our feelings a little bit in terms of some of the things that are going on the continent. And maybe we really need to wake up because people are suffering and we need to find a way to do something about it. It is 7:30 Central African time. It's time now to find out what's in your news headlines. Onelin Sinsi, good morning.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Poverty, jobs and high cost of living amongst the concerns raised ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address in South Africa later this evening. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will tonight deliver the State of the Nation address to a joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces at the Cape Town City Hall. At least 31 people have died after a powerful cyclone struck Madagascar, and voters are heading to the polls in Bangladesh for the first time since a deadly uprising in 2024 unseated the authoritarian Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It is time now for our sports update, and we say good morning again to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning once again indeed from the sports desk. We'll start this hour with some cricket news. So South Africa batter Ryan Rickleton admitted to peak anxiety levels in the dressing room as they got over the line by the skin of their teeth against Afghanistan in their second match of the ongoing T20 World Cup in Sri Lanka as well as India. So in some dramatic scenes in Ahmedabad on Wednesday, both sides scored exactly 187 in their 20 overs before unbelievably both then hitting 17 runs in the first super over. Still needing to be separated, South Africa put up 23 with Tristan Stubbs as well as David Miller at the crease. This time they were able to defend it only by 4 runs, and Rickleton, who top scored for the team in the normal overs with 61, says they were all nervous in the midst of the chaos.
Just anxiety. I think we're standing there, all of us sitting there upstairs, fingers crossed, like, come on guys, just more hope than anything. But yeah, like I said, it was an absolute whirlwind of a game. We were all in it. We rode the emotions, obviously, just like everyone else did. And it was pretty tough, I will say. But yeah, just glad that we got over the line.
Meanwhile, Keshav Maharaj was given the burden of defending that score in the second super over, which could still have lost it with the very final ball. But Ramula Gabaz was caught by David Miller attempting another 6. Rickleton says it was coach Shukri Conrad who made the call for the all-spinner to have a crack at it.
I actually was unsure. I thought KG or Marco was going to go, but it came from Shukri saying he thinks Kesh should go. And yeah, credit to where credit's due. I guess it worked. Came down to the last wire. We tried to change it up. I think bowl slow and wide and try to get them to hit over extra cover for 6 to the big boundary. That would be the thinking, which is probably the most difficult shot to do, I think. So I guess that would have been the plan. Just glad it came off.
On to football news now. Manchester City turned up the heat in the Premier League title race by taking apart Fulham in the first half to close the gap on leaders Arsenal to just 3 points. The Gunners are looking now over their shoulders before today's trip to Brentford United after Pep Guardiola's side backed up Sunday's last gasp comeback at Liverpool by sealing a comfortable 3 points at the top of, at the Etihad Stadium this past weekend. So 3 goals in the space of 15 first half minutes inflicted the damage against the Cottagers, who have now suffered 3 consecutive defeats. Guardiola's side had gone 4 games without a victory at the start of the year, but have responded well by winning 3 of the last 4, with a 2-2 draw at Tottenham Hotspur having been at 2-0 ahead, the only slight blemish. Now, victory over Fulham reinforced Etihad Stadium as a fortress for City, extending their unbeaten home run to 12 games and now taking 47 points from a possible 54. It is the type of run that could prove crucial in the chase for the top flight. Let's hear from Pep Guardiola speaking post last night's match.
It was a really good performance, one of the best in the season after Anfield. For our experience, when it's important emotional games like Anfield, the Champions League, the next one always is tricky. We're like it was a home and away, and we know the experience what happened in our first leg there when we suffered incredible second half because they are. I said we didn't run, we ran there. The process, they were so good, and we adjust a few things. And the first half in our pressing, counter-pressing with the ball, and second half they make a step up. When more in a team, they are more aggressive, they are more jump more, and after that, and the fatigue is there. But now they was exhausted. Roddy was exhausted.
Right, so we'll stay in England. 2 coaches were sacked yesterday. First, Nottingham Forest has sacked Sean Dyche as the head coach after just 114 days in charge and are looking for a 4th boss of the season. Now, Forest were held to a goalless draw at home by bottom place Wolves on Wednesday and are just 3 points above the Premier League relegation zone with 12 games remaining. Dutch, by the way, succeeded Ange Postecoglou in October of 2025 and had signed a contract until 2027. Meanwhile, Thomas Frank was also sacked by Tottenham Hotspur just under 18 months in charge following their dismal 2-1 defeat at home against Newcastle on Tuesday. Now, Spurs are 16th in the Premier League and are just 5 points above the relegation zone following a dreadful run of form. The North London side are winless in their past 8 Premier League games, their longest run without a victory since October of 2008. They have also just won 2 of their past 17 league matches and picked up only 12 in that time. And finally, in tennis news, Stefanos Tsitsipas has advanced to the Rotterdam Open quarterfinals, defeating 8th seed Artur Rindenek in straight sets of 7-5 and 6-3. The 27-year-old Greek, ranked world number 32, overcame a tight opening set before taking control and finishing the match with 16 winners and 14 unforced errors in one of the strongest performances in recent months. Tsitsipas will next face Dutch wildcard Botic van der Zandschap, who's ranked 65th in the world. He holds a 2-love record against the Dutchman, including a straight sets win in Basel in October of 2024. On that winning note, it concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do send us an email, first to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or call us. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with the final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Okay, so coming up a little bit later on, some people might not know, Asanda, that I actually was an auditor for many years. And I'm going to be talking to somebody who's the head of the Internal Auditors Association in South Africa. And I'm fascinated about what might come out of that conversation. What do you know about auditing?
I know it's definitely something I avoided when I was in school, so good luck to you.
Yeah, it's a fascinating profession, actually, and I think perhaps doesn't get the credit that it deserves. Public auditing and internal auditing, slightly different focus, but the public auditing arena hasn't always got the best press, given some of the scandals that played out. But it is such a critical function.
Then you have to be some kind of a person with integrity on that spot.
Absolutely. Oh, no question. So that's what I'll be looking at a little bit later on. But coming up shortly, the business news.
The whole population of Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Broadcast excellence, rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
Okay, so it is now time to find out what's happening in the world of business. And at the Business News Desk this morning, Chanduko Ligege. Good morning.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Gabon's mining minister says that energy shortages will not be accepted as justification for missing the country's 2029 ban on raw manganese exports, dismissing industry warnings that power constraints could delay refinery construction. The world's number 2 producer of manganese used in steel making and increasingly in electric vehicle batteries introduced the policy last year to diversify its economy after decades of raw ore exports, joining other African states seeking to capture more value from their mineral wealth. Power shortages are frequent in the Central African nation, hampering the expansion of energy-intensive industrialization. Principal researcher at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, Elsona van Hestian, says good technology is essential for modern mining extraction. This as the continent's mining sector is facing mounting pressure to adapt to extreme weather conditions due to climate change. African leaders who are part of this year's mining endeavor in Cape Town are emphasizing the urgent need for Africa's mining industry to cut its carbon footprint while remaining competitive and attractive to global investors. Van Hestian says the CSIR is also focused on the investment in projects that deal with socio-environmental issues.
So one of the big things is actually testing facilities, making sure that there's facilities and labs where a lot of the technologies can be tested so that it's not harmful, to make sure that there's no detrimental or no side effects. The other, I think, big value of an organization like the CSIR is actually the investment in everything around environmental rehabilitation. Huge investments around things like air pollution, substantial investment in aspects like water, ecosystem, accountability.
South African Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Nongceba Mhlawuli, has called on young people to register with government websites specifically intended to make available learning and employment opportunities for the youth. She delivered the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention results at a media briefing in Langa, Cape Town, ahead of the State of the Nation address by the President of South Africa this evening. Mhlawuli elaborates.
Opportunities are available right now. We call again, this is a call that we make each and every time we do have this briefing. We reiterate and we call upon our young people to register on sayouth.mobi. You go to www.sayouth.mobi, which is a zero-rated site. You do not need to have data to go onto the site, and it is available on all major networks, meaning that it is accessible to all of our young people. And most importantly, you will find all opportunities related to every and anything youth-related.
The International Monetary Fund expects South Africa's economy to have shown growth of 1.3% last year and to achieve growth of 1.4% this year. The growth is expected to be supported by household spending and greater investments driven by structural reforms. The IMF has commended South African government for maintaining macroeconomic stability and resilience amid global uncertainty. In its latest report, the IMF Board of Directors further praised South African authorities for lowering the inflation target to 3%. However, it emphasized that trade and global policy uncertainty remains a risk. Division Chief at the IMF, Delia Velkusauku, addressed the media during an online presentation.
The South African Reserve Bank new 3% inflation target is an important policy achievement. The exit from the FATF grey list and continued progress of structural reforms under Operation Vulindlela have supported confidence in the South African economy and have led to a first credit rating upgrade in many years. In this context, we have revised up our growth projections in the near term and expect growth to reach around 1.3% in 2025 and 1.4% this year, and to gradually rise to around 1.8% over the medium run.
China's chief trade negotiator Li Chenggang met Mexico's Deputy Economy Minister Vidal Lerranas in Beijing in the first face-to-face talks since Mexico imposed higher tariffs on Chinese imports, drawing warnings from Beijing. The two countries conducted an in-depth exchange on bilateral economic and trade relations and other issues. In December, Mexico announced steep tariff increases on China and other countries without free trade agreements with Mexico, most up to 35%. Now let's have a look at financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is at 1,000 naira 352, in Botswana 12 pula 97, Kenya 128 shilling 176, in Zambia 18 kwacha 98. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5.19, Russia 77 rubles 20, India 90 rupees 65, China 6 yuan 91, South Africa 15 rand 88 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound, 84 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $5,055, platinum at $2,117 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $69.67 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Now, let's take a look at this story that's fascinated South Africans for the last 2 days. Controversial South African private investigator Paul O'Sullivan has strongly denied allegations that he infiltrated the country's police watchdog body, known as the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, or IPID, which is responsible for probing misconduct and corruption within the police service. O'Sullivan has completed 2 days of testimony before a parliamentary ad hoc committee, which is examining national security concerns and claims that he exercised improper influence over senior police officials, including allegations that he impersonated an IPID officer. Well, the matter relates in part to a corruption complaint that he filed in 2016 against former acting National Police Commissioner General Khomotso Phahlane, which later triggered official investigations. Celine Merrington picks up the story for us.
The matter of O'Sullivan having influence in the law enforcement space was one of the big questions. He gave evidence leader, Advocate Norman Arendse, this answer when asked if he had infiltrated IPID.
So what's your response shortly of allegations that you have infiltrated IPID?
Well, it's a blatant lie. I've not infiltrated IPID.
He explained to MPs that he was accompanying an IPID official to the estate where former acting National Police Commissioner Khomotso Phahlane lived to show what he thought was evidence to support his complaint of corruption against the former top cop.
He asked me to go, and he said, "You drive the car." I said, "No, I'm not the IPID official. You're IPID official. You drive the car."
So is that what happened?
We went in my vehicle.
Because it was bigger.
Yes, but he drove.
And he drove the vehicle. And correct. When you entered the gate of the estate, he showed to the to security, gate security, his badge, his ID, and you went in on that basis.
That's correct.
Having 3 passports from 3 different countries, O'Sullivan also answered questions about him allegedly being a spy.
That's the narrative of the corrupt generals in crime intelligence and the police service. And it's not a new narrative. It was first started by the late Jackie Celebi. It was peddled again by General Phahlane, and it was peddled again in this house by General Mkhwanazi. So there's this strategy to discredit the good work I've done in this country over the last 36 years.
O'Sullivan initially insisted that he would only appear before the committee virtually due to serious threats to his life. These threats were from social media, he says. Parliament agreed to beef up security for his in-person appearance. Asked by EFF MP Leanne Matthys if security assessments were done to justify security arrangements made for him by Parliament, O'Sullivan had this to say.
What I'm saying is that you submitted evidence, right, that there are people that are threatening you on social media, but there wasn't an assessment on whether those threats were legit or not. And then Parliament came to the rescue and provided you with security using state resources without a security assessment.
That would appear to be the case.
The committee had to adjourn before finalizing its engagement with O'Sullivan after he alerted them that he's in excruciating back pain. Celine Merrington, Parliament.
Right, and let's take a look at this story now. South Africa's 2026 State of the Nation address. It will be delivered later today at the Parliament in the city of Cape Town. The address comes at a time when Africa is set to become the world's fastest growing economic region, with rising trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area. We speak to Jason Hamilton, lecturer in corporate and development finance at Stellenbosch Business School, and talking about how South Africa can seize this moment and position itself as a hub of African trade and investment. Jason, good morning to you and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What are your key expectations from today's SONA or State of the Nation address? What should government be prioritizing to make this address truly impactful?
Well, I think context is also important because amid this global volatility, the geopolitical and trade tensions, this disruption of long-term entrenched pillars of international order, Africa as a continent is becoming one of a resilient or resilient economies and really provides us with guarded optimism. So again, while the world the world engine is actually sputtering, Africa is gradually picking up steam, and South Africa specifically is one of the continent's obviously largest economies, and we must seize this opportunity. So from SONA, we need to see strong signals of bold and concrete agendas of participation in the African economy, and really an opportunity of unblocking structural hurdles standing in the way of business expanding, investment, and obviously employment creation. So in brief, a key focus areas that should be modernized is regulation, cutting red tape, facilitating ease of doing business, focus on infrastructure, electricity, logistics, and digital infrastructure, and of course, through all of this, addressing youth unemployment through the emphasis of digital skills, technical trades, and of course, entrepreneurship. And Africa really has a key role to play in accelerating trade diplomacy and also regional leadership.
You've spoken about the need for a bold but concrete economic plan. Which announcements in the SONA would signal that the government is serious about growth and investment?
I think it comes down to, and there's a few probably on each of these items I mentioned, but I think an important one is leadership, and I'm going to link it to regulatory reform. So for South Africa to become a magnet for investment and innovation, it means cutting this red tape, modernizing our regulations to ease the process and cost of doing business, spanning from simplifying business registrations and licensing to also more flexible labor regulations, specifically aimed at small businesses, to clear and have a consistent policy in sectors like mining and telecoms. And if we want to be both local or attract both local and foreign investors to bet on South Africa and create jobs in the process, we have to signal that this bureaucracy will not stand in the way. So predictable, investor-friendly rules can unleash entrepreneurship and attract capital that is currently wary. And I think critically, we must also then support our SMEs in becoming export ready and providing trade finance information, and specifically also through a digital agenda for South Africa, but the continent, to help generate Africa traders emerge.
Yes, on that digital economy, we know there are challenges, and not just on that, but also in energy and transport. So what should citizens be and investors also be looking out for when it comes to SONA in terms of infrastructure development on those particular sectors?
I think infrastructure has been key on the agenda for quite some time, and this, of course, is good to see. But it's also important to make sure that whatever plans and strategies we have spoken about needs to translate into concrete action. And I think a very, very strong positive move forward has been that our power grid and Eskom has been stabilized. We haven't seen load shedding for quite some time, but we still need to continue the agenda of adding renewable energy and focusing on effective distribution of power and enabling private investment into the grid as well. However, this is only part of it. We need effective logistics. That's the backbone of SA's competitiveness. So through streamlining logistics, urgent upgrade to our infrastructure, and this is rail, this is port, this is border post, to really handle the increased trade, but specifically increase inter-Africa trade. And I think what's often missed is also the digital infrastructure. So broadband, 5G, data centers, government should spur investment, both public spending and attracting private capital to expand internet access, specifically in your underserviced rural communities and townships, so that the digital economy becomes entrenched, but also doesn't leave certain communities behind. And this is really where the opportunity lies from a fintech perspective, entrepreneur perspective, and a digital agenda to really open up Africa trade to local South African, or actually to all South Africans across the continent.
Red tape is something that's often spoken about, and that's highlighted as a barrier. How important is it for SONA to address this particular issue and outline the specific regulatory changes?
Yeah, I think again, yeah, Africa has got South Africa has got a leading role to play, and I'm going to link it to something I think that's sometimes often missed as well, and this is in general, again, making it investor friendly, but then improving the ease of doing business. But this also relates to trade diplomacy and regional leadership, and I think the regional leadership is one that's important. So South Africa really should leverage its position in the Africa Union, in BRICS, and all the other things we're part of, to really push for much greater economic cooperation, as well as working to resolve regional conflicts and instabilities that threaten these trade routes. So from that perspective, SONA should really address progress in concluding key elements of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area that are still under negotiation, which includes intellectual property, competition policy, investment rules. And South Africa can and should lead by example by implementing a lot of these agreed protocols. So here our diplomacy and our diplomatic energy should lean into the South-to-South cooperation, aligning obviously with the global South trends of countries increasing trade with each other and remaining non-aligned amid these greater power clashes is going to be detrimental. So South Africa can be the voice of multilateralism and an open trade, even as others turn to protectionism, specifically if we look at our traditional partners. And that stance can really benefit not just South Africa, but all Africans.
Unemployment. Nearly half of South Africa's youth is unemployed. What should be addressed on that front?
Well, I think a lot of the things we have mentioned now briefly, I think touches indirectly on that. But yes, we need to see focus on education, skills, and youth. I think South Africa, irrespective of how you measure this, and I think you can see this, I think youth unemployment is sitting at about 46%. And this, of course, is more than just a statistic. It's really a social time bomb. And this needs to be a focus to bring more people into the economy, but from a job creation perspective, but also then from a entrepreneur's perspective. So here too, I think SONA should address overall in our education system, focus on vocational training programs to close that gap between what schools produce and what the market is really demanding. And here too, emphasis should be on digital skills, technical trades, and in entrepreneurship. The capabilities needed really in a diversified modern economy for the continent, but also for the globe. So expanding entrepreneurship and internship incentives can give young people critical work experience which gives them makes them far more employable, and of course also able to follow a entrepreneurial route. So government, but this is important also, it's not up to government alone. Government in partnership with industry and educational institutions should scale up the learn to earn programs in sectors like manufacturing, technology, green energy, and really targeted support for entrepreneurship as well. So we need to focus on incubators, mentorship programs, and this can really unleash startups and create jobs rather than only job seekers.
Thank you so much, Jason, again for your time. We'll leave it there. We appreciate it. Jason Hamilton is lecturer in corporate and development finance at Stellenbosch Business School. Let's catch you up with what's happening in the news now. We enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. I'm Asanda Beda with Peter Ndoro. Here is Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Poverty, jobs and the high cost of living amongst the concerns raised ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address in South Africa later this evening. Youth employment is also featured prominently, as well as quality education. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will tonight deliver the State of the Nation address to a joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces at the Cape Town City Hall. Ramaphosa is expected to outline interventions for the coming financial year, deliberating on South Africa's domestic priorities as well as the country's continental and international relations. With only a few hours left before the State of the Nation address, some residents in Johannesburg have called on South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to address the ongoing water crisis that has left several communities with dry taps. Residents in the city's southern suburbs have taken to the streets to protest over water outages that have lasted for weeks. Zubair Patel is a representative for the Johannesburg southern suburbs community.
We want answers. We're tired of being fed fake news. We're being told that there's no water in towers, there's no water in the reservoir. There's 2 towers and a reservoir here at Crown Gardens, and we're constantly being fed the information. It's a sort of a cut and paste exercise on a daily basis. What we want is open and transparent information. It doesn't help to tell us there's no water in the towers when there's certain parts of the area that's getting water, and they receive water from the Crown Gardens reservoir and towers as well.
Families of apartheid-era victims in South Africa say investigations into Truth and Reconciliation Commission-related crimes were deliberately suppressed. The families were speaking on the first day of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into alleged political interference in Johannesburg. The inquiry is examining whether political meddling delayed or blocked prosecutions of the apartheid-era crimes. In a joint statement read by Fatima Harun Masood, the daughter of the late anti-apartheid activist and struggle stalwart Imam Abdullah Haron, the families say their court papers show cases were deliberately suppressed in violation of their constitutional right.
Our court papers illustrate investigations and prosecutions of TRC cases were deliberately suppressed by South Africa's democratic government in violation of our rights to equality, dignity, and the right to life and bodily integrity. Such conduct has no place in a constitutional democracy founded on human rights and the right of or the rule of law. As a result of our court application and following partial settlements between the parties, President Cyril Ramaphosa agreed to establish a commission of inquiry.
At least 31 people have died after a powerful cyclone struck Madagascar. The Disaster Authority in the Indian Ocean Islands says Cyclone Gezani made landfall on Tuesday, hitting the island's main port, Tuamasina. The National Office for Risk and Disaster Management said many were killed when houses collapsed. The cyclone's landfall is likely to have been one of the most intense recorded around the city. Madagascar's Disaster Management Office has evacuated dozens of injured people and hundreds of residents from a district around Tuamasina, home to 400,000 people. Gezani is the second cyclone to hit Madagascar this year. This 10 days after tropical cyclone Fitia killed 14 and displaced over 31,000 people. Voters are heading to the polls in Bangladesh for the first time since a deadly uprising in 2024 unseated the authoritarian Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. There are two main candidates vying to replace her, the BBC's Jonathan Fairwin explains.
Tariq Rahman is the son of a former Prime Minister, and his Bangladesh Nationalist Party has been leading the polls, but it faces stiff competition from the country's largest Islamist party, Jamaat-e-Islami, led by Shafiqur Rahman. That party has faced criticism for fielding no female candidates. Sheikh Hasina's Awami League has been banned from running. Last year, a court sentenced her to death in absentia. She's currently in exile in India. The electorate will also cast their ballots on constitutional changes proposed by the interim government to fix what it called a completely broken political system.
Now, for any news or stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour's CAF inspection team to visit the 2027 AFCON co-hosts Uganda, Tanzania as well as Kenya this week, while South Africa win a thriller at the T20 World Cup against Afghanistan. Details of these and other stories coming up at 8:30.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
We enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. Thank you for staying with us as Channel Africa. From the African perspective, we bring you news and current affairs in this particular program. My name is Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. A very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. And this hour we're going to be taking a look at a number of things. One of the issues in South Africa is governance and accountability. I'm pretty sure the president is going to address that, but I'm going to be talking to the head of the Internal Auditors Association in South Africa about issues like that, and also the role that internal audit has in unpacking some of these burning issues and how to fix them.
Also, yes, as we spoke earlier, the State of the Nation address is going to be happening, and all eyes on that in South Africa. Unemployment being high on the agenda, and it remains a major problem. So what is the President Cyril Ramaphosa going to say about that? Some young people are eagerly awaiting to hear what plans government has. So that will be one of the focus areas of SONA, but also one of the topics we'll be touching on in this hour of Rise and Shine. Connect with us on the SABC Plus app. That's via mobile phones. You can also find us on YouTube, live streaming there at Channel Africa 1, our handle. And then also on the DSTV audio bouquet, Channel 802.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The International Monetary Fund expects South Africa's economy to grow by about 1.3% in 2025 and 1.4% in 2026, supported by stronger household spending and rising investment linked to ongoing structural reforms. Now, the fund has also commended the government for maintaining macroeconomic stability and resilience despite global uncertainty. In its latest article for assessment, the IMF board praised authorities for moving towards a lower 3% inflation target, but did warn that global trade tensions and shifting policy conditions remain key risk areas to the outlook. Economics reporter Naledi Ngoba has more.
The IMF expects South Africa's economic growth to reach 1.8% in the next 3 years and projects that inflation will converge to the new 3% target by the end of 2027. The International Financial Institution acknowledged the reduction of the country's fiscal deficit. However, it points out that the budget deficit remains elevated, resulting in stubbornly high debt levels. Division Chief at the IMF, Delia Velculescu, had this to say.
The South African Reserve Bank new 3% inflation target is an important policy achievement. The exit from the FATF grey list and continued progress of structural reforms under Operation Vulindlela have supported confidence in the South African economy and have led to a first credit rating upgrade in many years. In this context, we have revised up our growth projections in the near term and expect growth to reach around 1.3% in 2025 and 1.4% this year, and to gradually rise to around 1.8% over the medium run.
Velculescu points out that the implementation of structural reforms that allowed for private participation in the logistics and electricity sector have been effective in turning around South Africa's economic picture. She says other areas of reform could potentially unlock greater economic growth.
We recommend an ambitious package of reforms tackling regulatory barriers to the business environment, weaknesses in governance, and supported by labor market reforms that can help unlock jobs and growth. In sum, resilience so far, but need to pursue that resilience through prudent macroeconomic policies.
Velculescu emphasized that as the finance minister prepares to table the budget later this month, government should aim to deliver and maintain a primary budget surplus in line with its own projections.
We do look forward to the 2026 budget itself, and what we would hope and expect from it is, number one, to see adherence to the primary surplus target that was announced in the medium-term budget statement, so the 1.5% of GDP primary surplus. We hope that will be maintained. And importantly, we hope that the budget will specify the reforms needed to get there. What kind of reforms those might be? First, controlling the public sector wage bill would be something that would be looking at, and we know that the government has plans to address some of the inefficiencies there, to incentivize early retirement. We're also looking at reforms of procurement and improving its efficiency and transparency.
The IMF says fiscal consolidation efforts should focus on improving the efficiency and equity of public spending while protecting vulnerable groups and mobilize domestic revenues. I'm Naledi Ngcobo in Johannesburg.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Unemployment in South Africa remains a major problem. While some may think that unemployment is highest for those with no grade 12 or matric, it is also relatively high for university graduates. As the country anticipates the State of the Nation address by President Cyril Ramaphosa, some young people are eagerly waiting to hear what plans the government has to create job opportunities for them. Mtobisi Mkalipi spoke to some of the frustrated unemployed professionals. They had this to say.
Dr. Excellent Nkuna was among the top matric achievers in Mpumalanga in 2014. He was offered bursaries by multiple entities. He studied medicine at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He says he never thought that it would be difficult for him to find employment after graduating in 2021.
It is quite a difficult phase for anyone to go through, really. Also, because you wake up, you don't know what to do, start overthinking. You don't even know if, have you chosen the right career or what, are you gonna eventually get employed, or this is it, really. So it's quite difficult, and also the fact that it also starts to affect your mental health as well, and you also become very hopeless because there are more people who have been unemployed for longer periods than myself as well.
Qualified pharmacist Zandile Fakute from Barberton is among the country's unemployed young people who are pinning their hopes on the government to create jobs.
I completed my undergrad degree, did my internship, then community service,
And I thought by now I would have secured some form of permanent employment or a job, and I haven't. So I'm even considering going back to school at this point and getting my master's or even postgrad diplomas, because it really is demotivating, because when you go to school, you're thinking that I'm going to come back and I'm going to be helping my community, I'm going to be contributing to healthcare, and that's just not how it's happening. It's like a waste of time and money.
The South African Young Pharmacists Association is concerned that many qualified pharmacists have not been placed despite the shortage of pharmacists in public facilities. The organization's secretary, Trevor Ngobeni, claims that instead, the government has reduced the internship intake this year.
We have these new graduates that are looking to the government to take them and train them so that they meet their statutory requirements. Each province would take over 100 graduates. In this year alone, we've seen that at least in KZN, after much needed public outcry, we had about over 70 intern posts opened. In Free State, however, we've had none whatsoever. In the Northern Cape, we've had none whatsoever. In Gauteng, there's been a disappointing amount of pharmacy graduates that have been taken up to do their internship. And in Mpumalanga as well, I would say we only had an intake of 18, whereas we have over 80 of them in this province that are looking for that opportunity.
Mpumalanga chairperson of the South African Medical Association Trade Union, Dr. Mandla Machabe, is equally concerned about the high number of unemployed medical doctors countrywide.
We have to commend the strides taken by the Department of Health in Mpumalanga, where we've seen some significant movement being done in terms of the employment of doctors. But there are still some provinces whereby it's still quiet. We talk about the likes of Northern Cape, Western Cape. We still have those provinces that are not doing much in terms of the issue of the employment of doctors. And you still have provinces like Limpopo, where we find that the employment conditions for doctors differ from all of the other 8 provinces in the country, and that is really problematic. So despite the commitment made by the Minister of Health last year and the budget that was approved, there was an additional 20.8 billion that was then given to the Department of Health to employ doctors and cover all the other issues.
Dr. Nsizwa Zonke Yende, who is a lecturer at the University of Mpumalanga, says the lack of implementation of government resolutions remains a major problem.
I don't think that the president would talk about that, partly because these are issues that have been there since the first term. So I don't believe that would be something new that we can expect from SONA. Perhaps it would be something, an expansion in terms of what the government has done and in terms of the intention of revitalizing the health sector as well as creating job opportunities. They've always mentioned about that, but the problem that we have is the issue of the implementation and taking actions in terms of how are we doing it now. Because of course there's always issue that we're going to create jobs, but how are we creating the jobs? Are there enough things that the government are doing to revitalize sectors that are no longer working, to revitalize industries in locations?
Yende believes that the lack of job opportunities for qualified professionals, especially in medicine, discourages young people from pursuing such careers. I'm Toby Simkalipi in Mbombela, Mpumalanga.
As South Africa prepares for the State of the Nation address later today, attention is once again turning to accountability, delivery, and how public promises are translated into measurable results. Across Africa, governments face growing fiscal pressure, rising public scrutiny, and urgent development demands. And one of the least visible but most critical lines of defense in both public and private institutions is internal audit. The function that checks controls, flags risks, strengthens procurement oversight, and supports ethical governance. Well, to help us understand how this works in practice, we're now joined by Arlene Volnink, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Internal Auditors in South Africa. Arlene Lynn, thank you very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you for inviting me.
I have to tell you that I have been looking forward to this interview because it's pretty nostalgic for me. I was an auditor once upon a time in my life, years and years ago, so I understand the work that your colleagues and your associations people do. So let's talk about the State of the Nation address. The government is going to make some promises, look at spending commitments and priorities. I suppose the question for us is, where do internal auditors fit to make sure that those promises turn into real and measurable delivery?
Thank you so much, Peter. And, I'd like to start with our purpose, our why. And our why we exist, is to improve the governance, risk management, and control environment within organizations. We are there to add and protect value and to serve public interest. So the government will call for departments, state-owned enterprises, organizations to do more with less, focusing on tightening of budgets and budget disciplines, and efficient use of public resources. And that's where we as internal audit come in. We are there to hold these departments, organizations accountable, so that at the end of the day, we serve public interest and there's actual service delivery. So very much focused on outcomes.
So tell me a little bit about your ability to be or to ask for accountability, because in the end, particularly internal auditors in the public sector are employed by those that they are holding to account. That must be a challenge.
It is a challenge, but I think we always explain it in terms of independence and objectivity. Independence is really our positioning, and that's why you'll find that we report directly to the boards or the governing council, sometimes through the audit committee, and that really protects us to have an independent voice. But what our global internal audit standards called for is also objectivity. That is a state of mind or mindset, where we really need to apply our judgment and exercise professional courage within organizations. So there is a challenge for internal auditors, particularly, as you say, where we speak up about corruption and things we see in organizations. But this is why it's important for us to continuously reinforce who we are. I think there's a misunderstanding and a misconception of the profession. We are there to really assist and support management. We are strategic advisors. And, our currency, I always say our currency is trust. So that's important. We're there to serve the public, serve public trust, add value to organizations. But to do so, we need to have courage as auditors, and that's why it's embedded within our principles.
I'm going to go on for this independence thing a little bit more, because you can get to a point where you come up with an audit report, you find the issues, you report to these senior people. What if they say, "Great work, Arlene Lynn, I'll take it from here," and then nothing happens?
I think, Peter, and, you mentioned you were an auditor as well, but this is where our profession is evolving. Peter, I was also an auditor myself in practice. I'm non-practicing, but I was practicing for over 22 years. And management, relationship building is so important for us along this journey of becoming strategic advisors. So once I have my good audit report, it's up to me to really sit down with management and say, what are practical recommendations? How can the focus is not on having a lengthy 100-page report, but really, how can we take the results of the audit, take those controls that weren't working and work together to improve those controls. So we sit down with management and we come up with actionable plans, because at the end of the day, we want to have sustainable controls, not just corrective actions, but sustainable controls. We also want a good control environment, because that talks to governance. So many of the times now in these days, Peter, internal auditors are focusing on culture audits as well, because to have a good control environment, good governance in place, you need a good culture within the organization. And that's where internal audit really comes alive and contributes.
I suppose, from what I remember, and I think you've mentioned it quite a bit now when it talks about systems and internal control, that sometimes people think that a focus on actual transactions and actual events is what internal audit does. But I would imagine that what's most important is to make sure that the systems are designed in a way that things will work on their own, because with weak systems, the opportunity for all those transactions to go wrong perhaps become greater.
Yes, 100%, Peter. And we do things like data analytics, etc., which helps us just to work smarter. But our focus, as you say, is really on the controls. What is in place to prevent things from going wrong? Our focus as internal auditors is really not to look back at things that have happened, transactions that have happened, but to try to support management to look forward and ensure that risks don't materialize. So you'll see that we focus as a profession on risk-based auditing, risk-based planning, and then also, as I say, on controls to make sure that there are systems in place to protect the organization, to protect value. So yes, our focus is not on transactions, our focus is on risks and controls.
So, skills must be a big issue for you, because you have to have skilled people to be able to do this work for us to be able to feel safer with those systems that you describe. Do we have enough skills in terms of internal auditors in the country?
The short answer, Peter, is no, and that's why internal audit is included on the critical skills list within South Africa. And I think you'll find that there's deficit across Africa as well. We were fortunate this week to host workshops with all the leaders of the 28 Africa affiliates, as well as our global board of directors and global executive leadership team in Africa. So I think you can tell that there's definitely an interest and an investment in Africa when it comes to internal audit skills. Our flagship qualification or certification is the Certified Internal Auditor. To give you an idea, in South Africa we have 9,000 professional members, 1,500 student members, but we only have 1,200 certified internal auditors. So our work is really cut out for us. We need to support our practicing internal auditors to have the appropriate qualifications. Certified internal auditor is that really gives you the foundation of knowledge of the standards and the content to be able to practice. But obviously within organizations, what is also important is to understand the business. We really can't serve management or serve the board if we don't understand the business. So certified internal auditor, we don't have enough of them across the country. And that is where all these leaders have come together to plan strategically around the roadmap to improve that landscape, Peter.
We're running out of time, but on your wish list, what's the biggest ambition you have for internal audit here, and also from what you've been hearing across the continent, just so that we can really tell better stories in terms of dealing with things like corruption and poor systems, etc.?
I think biggest on my wish list, and I think this comes through in our Vision 2035 report as well, and it's open to the public to read about our profession and how we see it looking in 2035. But I think for me, going back to my days of being an auditor, and even all the stories I hear now, day in and day out, from our chief audit executives across the country, is that there is still a misunderstanding and a misconception of what internal audit is. We are really there as strategic advisors. We are not compliance checkers. We are not watchdogs. We are there to walk the journey with management, to achieve strategic objectives, to have good controls in place. We want to see ethical and effective leadership within our country, and internal audit is part of that solution.
And I wish you the best with that, and I doff my hat because I know how hard your people work and how important that work is. So Arlene, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you.
That was Arlene Len Volmnik, who's the CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors in South Africa. It's 8:30. Here are your news headlines with Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. South Africa's Deputy National Police Commissioner Tebello Mosikili says there is a high police visibility around the Cape Town City Hall ahead of the State of the Nation address. Members of different political parties have also started to arrive at the venue where President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to deliver the SONA tonight. Over 30 people have died after a powerful cyclone struck Madagascar. And police in Canada have named the person suspected of shooting dead at least 8 people in rural British Columbia. The Prime Minister, Mark Carney, says the killings has left Canada in shock. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time now to find out what's happening in the world of sports, and we say good morning to Musibudi Makura to update us on that.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. A very good morning from the sports desk. Well, a team of technical experts has been sent by the Confederation of African Football, CAF, to the 3 nations that will host the next edition of the CAF Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Kenya, Tanzania, as well as Uganda. So the spotlight has now shifted to the 3 East African countries, and this will also be highlighted by the visit to Tanzania by the CAF president, as well as the executive committee this coming Friday. So the inspection visits by the technical experts kicked off earlier this week and will run until Tuesday, the 17th of February, as CAF applies its strict world-class delivery standards. Now, this will include technical assessments covering pitch requirements, as well as safety, security, and infrastructure readiness at a key match, as well as training venues earmarked to use during the course of next year's tournament. Well, South African batter Ryan Rickleton admitted to peak anxiety levels in the dressing room as they got over the line by the skin of their teeth against Afghanistan in their second match of the ongoing T20 World Cup in India and Sri Lanka. In some dramatic scenes in Ahmedabad, both sides scored exactly 187 in their 20 overs before both then hitting 17 runs in the first super over, and still needing to be separated. South Africa put up 23 with Tristan Stubbs as well as David Miller at the crease. Now this time they were able to defend it by only 4 runs, and Rickleton, who top scored for his side in the normal overs with 61 runs, says they were all nervous in the midst of the chaos.
Just anxiety. I think we're standing there, all of us sitting there upstairs, fingers crossed, like, come on guys, just more hope than anything. But yeah, like I said, it was an absolute whirlwind of a game. We were all in it. We rode the emotions, obviously, just like everyone else did. And it was pretty tough, I will say. But yeah, just glad that we got over the line.
Meanwhile, Keshav Maharaj was given the burden of defending that score in the second super over, which South Africa could still have lasted with the very final ball, but Ramula Gabars was caught by David Miller attempting to hit another six. Now, Rockleton says it was coach Shukri Conrad who made the call for the off-spinner to have a crack at it.
I actually was unsure. I thought KG or Marco was going to go, but it came from Shukri saying he thinks Kesh should go. And yeah, credit to where credit's due. I guess it worked. Came down to the last wire. We tried to change it up. I think bowl slow and wide and try to get them to hit over extra cover for six to the big boundary. That would be the thinking, which is probably the most difficult shot to do, I think. So I guess that would have been the plan. Just glad it came off.
Tennis news now. Stefanos Tsitsipas has advanced to the Rotterdam Open quarterfinals after defeating 8th seed Artur Rennik in straight sets 7-5 and 6-3. The 27-year-old Greek, ranked world number 32, overcame a tight opening set before taking control and finishing the match with 16 winners and 14 unforced errors in one of his strongest performances in recent months. Tsitsipas will next face Dutch wildcard Bottega van der Zandschulp, ranked 65th in the world. He holds a two-love record against the Dutchman, including a straight sets win in Basel in October of 2024. And finally, day one of Formula One's 2026 pre-season test in Bahrain, so Lando Norris set the fastest lap for McLaren, clocking 1 minute and 34.669 seconds. He finished just 0.129 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen's Red Bull, with Charles Leclerc a third for Ferrari in 1 minute 35.190 seconds. Now, while Norris topped the timesheets, much of the paddock's attention was on Red Bull's new in-house power unit, which impressed with both pace and reliability. Now, this also marks the first time since entering Formula One in 2025 that Red Bull have manufactured their own engine, and their strong showing follows a promising shakedown in Barcelona just last month. The Bahrain test runs from the 11th until the 13th of February, the first of the two-day sessions before the season begins with the Australian Grand Prix on the 8th of March. It is 8:36 a.m. Central African time. It concludes your sports news on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. Back with more sports news in the next hour with the On the Move team. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Right, coming up shortly is the business news, but taking you back in time, 1974. That was the year West Germany won the World Cup, by the way, Asanda. Mm-hmm. And I vaguely remember it because I was a little boy, and it was a very exciting time to watch things like the World Cup. I was understanding it for the first time in my life. But that's another whole story. Yeah. Right here on the continent, a mutiny began in Ethiopia, and that was by the Ethiopian army units in Asmara. Now, that was then part of Ethiopia, but now Eritrea, as soldiers demanded better pay and better working conditions. This unrest was a critical catalyst in a series of events that weakened Emperor Haile Selassie's authority, eventually leading to the 1974 revolution and the rise of the Derg military junta. And that actually led to Emperor Haile Selassie's ousting on the 12th of September in 1974. So it all began today in 1974. If they had just kept the soldiers happy, maybe Emperor Haile Selassie might have continued his reign. That's your history today in history. There'll be business news coming up shortly.
The Morning Switch Weekend. with the shy guy.
I Show Speed, often called Speed, who is a popular American YouTuber and live streamer known for his high-energy personality, loud reactions, and unpredictable humor. He visited Ethiopia, and he was shocked what he found out actually when he got to Ethiopia. He got to find out that, they don't use the Gregorian calendar. That is, we are in 2026 right now. And he got to find out they are in 2018.
2018. Nah, you trolling me. It's 2026. No. It ain't 2026. Wait, hold on. Wait, we in the past? Ronaldo is still in Real Madrid. Everything is in the past here.
Oh man, how shocked Speed was. He went back in time.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time.
Okay, let's find out what's happening in the world of business and the last update for this morning on Rise and Shine. And at the business desk is Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Gabon's mining minister says that energy shortages will not be accepted as justification for missing the country's 2029 ban on raw manganese exports, dismissing industry warnings that power constraints could delay refinery construction. The world's number 2 producer of manganese, used in steel making and increasingly in electric vehicle batteries, introduced the policy last year to diversify its economy after decades of raw ore exports, joining other African states seeking to capture more value from their mineral wealth. Power shortages are frequent in the Central African nation, hampering the expansion of energy-intensive industrialization. Principal researcher at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, Elsona Van Heestien, says good technology is essential for modern mining extraction. This as the continent's mining sector is facing mounting pressure to adapt to extreme weather conditions due to climate change. African leaders who are part of this year's Mining Indaba in Cape Town are emphasizing the urgent need for Africa's mining industry to cut its carbon footprint while remaining competitive and attractive to global investors. Van Heestien says the CSIR is also focused on the investment in projects that deal with socio-environmental issues.
So one of the big things is actually testing facilities, making sure that there's facilities and labs where a lot of the technologies can be tested so that it's not harmful, to make sure that there's no detrimental or no side effects. The other, I think, big value of an organization like the CSIR is actually the investment in everything around environmental rehabilitation. Huge investments around things like air pollution, substantial investment in aspects like water, ecosystem, accountability.
South African Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Nokeba Mhlawuli, has called on young people to register with government websites specifically intended to make available learning and employment opportunities for the youth. She delivered the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention results at a media briefing in Langa in Cape Town ahead of the State of the Nation address by the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, this evening. Mhlawuli elaborates.
Opportunities are available right now. We call again, this is a call that we make each and every time we do have this briefing. We reiterate and we call upon our young people to register on sayouth.mobi. You go to www.sayouth.mobi, which is a zero-rated site. You do not need to have data to go onto the site. And it is available on all major networks, meaning that it is accessible to all of our young people. And most importantly, you will find all opportunities related to every and anything youth-related.
The International Monetary Fund expects South Africa's economy to have shown growth of 1.3% last year and to achieve growth of 1.4% this year. The growth is expected to be supported by household spending and greater investments driven by structural reforms. The IMF has commended the South African government for maintaining macroeconomic stability and resilience amid global uncertainty. In its latest report, the IMF Board of Directors further praised South African authorities for lowering the inflation target to 3%. However, it emphasized that trade and global policy uncertainty remains a risk. Division Chief at the IMF, Delia Velkolascu, addressed the media during an online presentation.
The South African Reserve Bank new 3% inflation target is an important policy achievement. The exit from the FATF grey list and continued progress of structural reforms under Operation Vulindlela have supported confidence in the South African economy and have led to a first credit rating upgrade in many years. In this context, we have revised up our growth projections in the near term and expect growth to reach around 1.3% in 2025 and 1.4% this year, and to gradually rise to around 1.8% over the medium run.
China's chief trade negotiator Li Chenggang met Mexico's Deputy Economy Minister Vidal Llerenas in Beijing in the first face-to-face talks since Mexico imposed higher tariffs on Chinese imports, drawing warnings from Beijing. The two countries conducted in-depth exchanges on bilateral economic and trade relations and other issues. In December, Mexico announced steep tariff increases on China and other countries without free trade agreements with Mexico, most up to 35%. Now let's have a look at financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is 1,000 naira 352, Botswana 12.97, Kenya 128 shilling 176, Zambia 18 kwacha 98. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil 5 real 19, Russia 77 rubles 20, India 90 rupees 65, China 6 yuan 91, South Africa 15 rand 88 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $5,073, platinum at $2,129 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $69.60 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
On the 30th of September 2024, the Lesotho Highlands Water Project shut down the transfer tunnel to South Africa for maintenance. The scheduled maintenance takes place every 10 years, whereby the tunnel is inspected for possible areas of wear and tear, particularly on the steel linings. Rapelanga Khadebe reports.
Every 10 years, the Lesotho Highlands Water Project has to conduct a mandatory inspection of the transfer water tunnels. This project delivers a total of 980 million cubic meters of water to Gauteng province per annum.
This is a very huge and complex project. It has technical aspects, it has financial aspects, it has social aspects, it has environmental aspects. Our transfer tunnel from the intake to Mwela Hydropower is 47 kilometers. From Mwela Hydropower to Clarence is 38 kilometers. That means the entire delivery system from Katsi to Clarence is 85 kilometers. If you add Mohali, which is another 38 kilometers, and add Pudihari, it means when Pudihari comes on board, the total tunneling system on the Lesotho Highlands Water Project would be around 161 kilometers. Now, portions of this tunnel are still lined. These are usually portions that cross the rivers, like the portion that goes under the Caledon, under three other rivers, I think Wajani, Hololo, and Pelaning, and areas that are too close to the surface for proper protection.
The 2024 maintenance came at 124 million rands repair bill. but also meant no delivery of water to South Africa, while Lesotho also lost out on hydropower generation.
As a result of that, we had in 2024 a shortfall of 80 million cubic meters that should have been delivered to South Africa. And in 2025, we had a shortfall of 156 million cubic meters, or 156 billion liters. However, we're making up because we're delivering more than what we normally do. For instance, the target for 2026 is currently 985 million cubic meters instead of the 780. So we're delivering more in 2025. There will still be a small shortfall at the end of 2025 according to the delivery schedule that we've just approved. There will be a 31 million cubic meter shortfall. But that is not the problem that the Gauteng people are experiencing. There's enough raw water supply to Gauteng at the moment. Our dams are full. Vaal itself has got enough water. So the problem is in the delivery system, the distribution system in Gauteng, not the raw water delivery. There's enough water from Lesotho and from other sources in the Vaal to supply the whole of Gauteng. The problem is in the delivery system on that side.
South Africa is a water-scarce country. Hence, the need for the current Phase 2 project to be delivered on schedule and on budget in order to address possible water challenges in the Gauteng province.
Phase 2 is going to augment the current delivery. So remember, we said we are doing 780 million cubic meters a year. We are going to add another 490 on top of that. So when Phase 2 starts delivering, hopefully around 2028, last quarter of 2028, we will be delivering 1.2 trillion liters per year to Gauteng. However, the long-term forecasts by DWS indicate that we may need further augmentation after 2042. So the delivery of Phase 2 will provide water security to Gauteng until 2042. Beyond that, we may have to look at other longer-term measures to augment supply to Gauteng, because remember, Gauteng is growing, and it's growing at a phenomenal rate. You've seen informal settlements popping up all over Gauteng, and within time they will be demanding water. Industries are growing. The mining sector went through a slump. It's starting to show signs of revival now. So there is going to be a need for further augmentation in the future. Where that augmentation is going to come from, that's a decision for our principals, for the parties. They may decide to go for further phases of Lesotho Highlands. We don't know. They may go for other options. The options that were looked at during the feasibility studies, such as Tutugela or the OVTS, Orange Vaal transfer system. But at this stage, such a decision has not been made.
Both Lesotho and South Africa have undertaken to conduct a quarterly inspection to be able to pick up any unforeseeable delays and jointly address them timeously. I'm Rapelang Khatebe for SABC News, Masego, Lesotho.
Okay, so it's time to find out what's happening on the move in 9 minutes' time, and Palesa is in studio to tell us what she and brother Benjamin will be doing today on the program.
Of
Good
course.
morning.
Good morning. All right, so in the first hour of the show, it's not easy being an entrepreneur, we know that, especially these days in the fashion industry where counterfeit goods are actually so prevalent. And one such designer, who's the founder of a brand called Idaimani, has found his clothes being advertised in the streets of Johannesburg and on Facebook that are counterfeit goods, and losing around 100,000 rand because of that. And we're going to be speaking about that with him, the founder of Idaimani, unpacking the counterfeit crisis and how he's trying to fight back.
So, one thinks that the counterfeit targets are your Hugo Boss,
Yes,
Armani.
yeah. They're starting to target our own brands too. I mean, the likes of Galaxy Boy,
Yes.
Era by DJ Zintle, and as we now
And
know,
I
this
suppose
guy.
that guy from Eastern Cape, Marcosa.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There are a lot of those
there are some
counterfeit goods as
knockoffs
well. Yeah.
as well. Yeah, I think it's worse for me if we're going to target our local artists.
exactly.
I mean, designers.
Yeah.
I know it's not right to say it's okay to target.
Yes, it's not okay at all. It's illegal. But yes, but I mean, spare our own at least, spare our own. So we want to chat about that on today's show.
Okay, I look forward to that actually. And I mean, we're busy trying to hustle and make it in life. Do you know what I mean?
And I mean, even having a brand that actually becomes popular enough is hard in South Africa, right?
Yes.
And one that actually is generating an income. So Asanda's right. I mean, don't target our own people.
But I suppose in a way it's flattering.
No, it's not.
It
100,000
because
rand, that's lost.
it is. It's definitely a no, and it's a bad thing.
But it's like we want this, but we can't afford it.
Yes.
So now we're gonna make it ourselves, which is terrible. But I get what you mean.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because you've really got to a place where people are so desperate for your product that they're making fakes. But it's a tough one. So please, if you're listening, and we're stop it, man.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Now, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into alleged political interference in the apartheid-era cases in South Africa, referred to by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, has officially begun its work in Johannesburg. The inquiry, chaired by retired Justice Sisi Kampepe, is investigating whether political interference within the criminal justice system delayed or even blocked the prosecution of TRC-related crimes, including murders and enforced disappearances. Families of the victims addressed the media at the Commission's opening session on Wednesday, and our reporter Lebohang Mabange was there and filed this report.
We say enough is enough.
More than 2 decades after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission concluded its work and referred cases for prosecution, many families say justice has never materialized. The commission, now underway, is probing whether there was political interference in the investigation and prosecution of those TRC-related crimes. Representing the family of the late Imam Haron, Fatima Haron Masood told the media that families feel their right to justice has been unlawfully taken away.
For many of us, justice has been indefinitely delayed. We will never see those who were tortured, maimed, killed, or forcibly disappeared, our loved ones held criminally accountable. That right has been unlawfully taken from us. Now, as we pursue truth and justice through an open and transparent process before the Kampepe Commission, our efforts are once again being obstructed by some of the very individuals and entities who publicly claim to support victims.
At the center of the inquiry is whether political interference prevented apartheid-era cases from moving forward after being referred by the TRC to the National Prosecuting Authority. Advocate Yonela Ntloko, representing the NPA, told the Commission that the authority is neither conceding nor denying allegations of political interference at this stage.
At this instance, I wish to point out that the NPA has not and does not accept or reject that there has been political interference in the investigation of prosecutions of TRC-related matters. That is still a matter to be determined based on the evidence that will come out, and therefore there is no concession or denial in that regard.
But some families say previous court documents already acknowledged interference. Lucanyo Galata, representing the family of Fort Galata, one of the CREDOC 4 activists, says the NPA has previously admitted this in affidavits.
I think we as the CREDOC 4 families, when we filed an application to compel the NPA in 2021, in those documents, in the NPA's replying affidavit, they confirmed that there had been political interference. They submitted that document to court where they admitted. They admitted so in the Nokuthula Simelane matter, and they again admitted so in the Ahmed Timol matter. So they can't now come back here and come and say, but there wasn't interference. It's either there was or there wasn't.
For families of those who disappeared during apartheid, the delay has compounded their trauma. Hlekani Rikotso, sister to Ignatius Mtebule, who disappeared in 1987, says contradictory responses from authorities have stalled progress.
The NPA was giving contradictory statements, which was actually leading us nowhere. If we have a case like this, we need people to come forward. We need people to take responsibility, because these are our families who actually disappeared or died or whatever in the hands of the apartheid police. So some of these answers that they are giving, or the explanations that they are giving, they also contribute towards the delay of what we are trying to do.
The Commission has already faced legal challenges, including unsuccessful attempts by former Presidents Jacob Zuma and Thabo Mbeki to have Justice Kampepe recuse herself. As hearings continue, the central question remains whether political interference within the justice system prevented apartheid-era crimes from being prosecuted, and whether accountability can still be achieved decades later. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And that's our programming for this 12th of February.
Hey, sure, my sister.
We'll do this again tomorrow from 6 a.m. Central African time.
Yeah, we hand over to Rise and Shine now.
On the move.
On the move. Hi. It's time to go.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
Good morning. It's 9 a.m. Central Africa time, and it's time for On the Move with myself, Palesa Tau, and Benjamin Moshatama. But first, let's get our latest news update.
SABC News. The African Perspective.